To Guadalajara, yes, after 20 years. I was here exactly 20 years ago with Carlos Fuentes and William Styron. It was very enjoyable, but very nice to be back and see how much it has grown, how much the FIL, how much bigger it is, and it's very impressive.
Your books are translated into 40 languages.
Yeah, 41, 42, yeah. No, I mean, I speak French, okay, and I speak pretty bad Italian, and I speak some Indian languages, speak Hindi and Urdu.
Let's begin with the concept generation. Carlos Fuentes, Milan Kundera, and you seem to be a generation. Exists that generation? Do you believe in this concept?
I always think of Kundera and Fuentes as a slightly earlier generation than my own. I admired them both very much, but they felt like, I don't know, uncles. I feel like a member, which was a very talented generation of writers that arose in the English language, in the late 70s and early 80s. Writers like Martin Amis, Ian McEwan, Angela Carter, Jeanette Winterson, Don DeLillo, Paul Auster, etc. That feels like my generation. I think that's the secret. No matter how much fantasy there is in the story, the heart of the story, which is human beings and human nature, that has to be real. Because if that's not real, then none of it works. And if the human beings feel truthful, and if what the story tells you about human nature, if that feels truthful, then the fantasy is just a means to an end.
Yesterday you talked about the fairy tales,
yeah.
The 1001 Night.
Yeah.
With this theme.
Yes, but that's one of the most famous collections. There are many others. But what they all have in common is this fact that no matter how many flying carpets and genies there might be, the human beings in them are all real people. And so it's about real people to whom magical, incredible things happen. And it asks how people deal with that.
Like Greek god specials.
Yes.
Human.
Yes. It's like, in Greek mythology, it often happens that the gods interfere in the lives of human beings. Like in the Trojan War, the gods take sides, and they have favorites, and they have people who they don't like. And it's that question about what happens to human beings when extraordinary characters or extraordinary events intrude into their lives and begin to mess them around.
That's literature, but it's been more than 25 years since the fatwa against you.
Yes.
Now, with this chaotic world, with this violent reality everywhere, will you write again the satanic verses?
Oh, well, I don't have to write it again because I already wrote it. But I'm very proud of it as a book. And I actually think that this moment, as you say, it's 27 years since the book came out, that finally people are able to appreciate it simply as a work of literature, instead of thinking about it as some kind of political scandal, And so finally it becomes a novel, and it means that a lot of people really like it, and I'm in favor of their point of view. I don't see why the book has to be judged only because a certain number of people did not like it. There's actually a lot of people who did like it, and I'm happy that it's in that place now.
Has survived that controversial book in different ways. More novel, more prizes, fame, essays, many prizes, and international support beyond the fame.
Well, I just thought the best thing to do is to go on being the writer I always wanted to be. And, the Satanic Verses was my 5th published book. It was my 4th novel, my 5th book. The other book was my book about Nicaragua, which is reportage. But, that was 5th. Now this book is I even can't remember. It's either the 17th or the 18th book, So most of my life as a writer has been after the attack on the Satanic Verses. And I'm happy that, that I'm still around and people are still interested.
You said yesterday, bad boys often win.
Yes.
But they didn't.
In this particular case, no, I'm happy to report that they did not in this particular
That's
case.
why you use the word often.
Yeah, often. And you know, this particular novel has an unusually optimistic ending. You know, I mean, given that the world right now feels quite dark, you know, but the book seemed to work out quite well. I was quite surprised at how cheerfully it worked out. So let's hope that happens in real life too.
What do you think about the Nobel Prize awarded to a journalist, the Belarusian Svetlana Alexievich, and not to a fiction writer? Do you agree?
Well, I'm actually a great admirer of Alexievich's writing, you know, because I think what she does is something between journalism and literature. What she does is she goes and listens to the stories of ordinary people, and then she writes those stories in their voice. You know, but it's a very literary construction. You know, so the fact that it's non-fiction, I don't really care about that. But she is a very considerable writer. I mean, her book about Chernobyl is a wonderful book.
Is the non-fiction time for Nobel Prize?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting choice. But I just think that she is a very exceptional writer. You know, I don't think that there will be that many more non-fiction winners in the near future. But she's just an extraordinary writer, and so I'm happy that she won.
Many people talk about this Polish journalist, Kapuczynski.
Yes. Well, Kapuczynski was a very close friend of mine, and I think that particularly his book about Haile Selassie, the emperor, is a masterpiece. But we had a lot of arguments about the nature of truth, because this is the problem. But when you start using literary technique to write about real life, the question of what is the truth becomes important. And there are some moments in Kapuczynski, including in The Emperor, where I think he departs from the truth in a way that is problematic. And we used to argue about it, but the book is still, it's a very beautiful book. If you think about it as fiction or fact, I'm not sure.
Who are your favorite writers, Joseph Conrad and Anton Chekhov? After the title of your biographical book,
yeah.
Do you have a favorite Spanish writer, Mexican maybe?
Well, I mean, you know, Carlos Fuentes was a good friend of mine, so I'm obviously a fan of his books. But I really love the Pedro Páramo of Juan Rulfo. I mean, that's a book that I really, really admire very deeply. So I would say Rulfo probably, you know.
We are in a brave new world, Mr. Rushdie, but where do we go? In the times of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, thousands and thousands of weapons all around, voices of angry everywhere. Is the world in the dawn of the Third World War?
I don't know. No, I don't think it's. I think it's a bad time. There's no question. This is a very dark, violent time, you know. And I'm very bad at foretelling the future. So one of the things is that when I was studying history, one of my professors said to me, "Don't bother about the future." He said it's hard enough to understand why what happened. Concentrate on that. Understand why we're here. You know, how did we get here from there? That's the question. What happens tomorrow? It's a stupid question because nobody knows. And you know, one of the things about history is that it's often very, very unexpected. And what you think is going to happen is not what happens. You know, if I had sat here with you, let's say in January of 1989, and I said to you the Soviet Union will not exist at Christmas time, you would have thought I was mad. You know? But well, that's what happened. So what I'm saying is that history can be very unexpected. And so just because this is a dark time, we don't have to assume that it will always be like this.
Francis Fukuyama talked about the end of history.
Yeah. Well, he was wrong.
Huntington talked about the clash of civilizations.
Yes, they're both wrong.
Both?
No, I mean, well, Fukuyama, I mean, really, even he knows that it wasn't the end of history, you know. Huntington, it's too simple, the Huntington thesis, because it suggests that the West and the Islamic world are like monolithic, you know. Whereas one of the things we know is that inside the world of the West, there are many conflicts and arguments and disagreements. And also in the Islamic world, you know, the Sunni-Shia divide is very profound, you know. So there's no such thing as a monolithic civilization in conflict with another one. It's just too easy. But I mean, clearly what is true is that there's a certain kind of radical Islam that believes itself to be at war with a certain idea of the West. You know, that is happening. But the Huntington thesis is too general. It's too broad.
What about Mexico, beyond the writers and the art, in politics, in society? Are you...
Well, I've been here quite a few times over the years. You know, I've traveled I mean, I was here a year ago. I was in Jalapa at the literary festival in, Veracruz, and I've spent time in Oaxaca. I've been around a little bit, and it's a fascinating country that I think right now has some serious problems. I mean, I find it very, you're a journalist, you must find it worrying the number of journalists who accidentally die right now. You know, that needs to stop happening.
Mr. Rushdie, thank you very much for your time, for your words, for your books, for your visit.
Thank you very much. Thank you.